Hey guys, so do you go through your day wishing that you felt just a little bit more positive emotion than negative emotion? Like if you could just kind of like get just a little bit less of those negative feelings, times that you feel bad, and just boost up some of those times that you feel good. So we can actually do this through some techniques that we know from psychological science. And in this video, I'm going to teach you how and also explain kind of the differences between positive emotions and negative emotions and kind of how they work in the brain. So, positive and negative emotion, what's the difference? Actually, our brain treats them equally in importance. So it's not that positive emotion is more important, it's just that it's useful for different reasons. So positive emotion is really useful for creativity. It makes us more creative. It actually makes us think in more shortcuts, like it makes our brains stereotype more, which is interesting. And it's really great for having like a global view, which makes sense for creativity. While negative emotion makes us really zero in. It makes us have very concrete thinking. It's good for problem solving, and it's just very, very focused. So for our bodies, there's actually a lot of benefits to feeling positive emotion. We know that people who feel more positive emotion, they get sick less, they have less detriments from stress, things like that. So there's definitely some good health benefits to positive emotion. There are also studies that show that negative emotion is useful. For example, Dr. Humphrey, which I'll link in the description below, has a study in which she found that grumpy people actually pay closer attention to details, they show less gullibility, and are less prone to errors of judgment, and formed higher quality persuasive arguments in her study than had their happier counterparts. So it's kind of interesting, right? Especially since we currently live in such a happiness culture and in a way in which maybe feeling down or feeling more negative emotion can feel almost shameful. So that kind of takes me to my next point, in which negative emotions and positive emotions are different in the fact that negative emotions are just a little more sticky to our brain. So there's a good metaphor for this in which there's a scientist that refers to them as negative emotions are like Velcro for our brain, while positive emotions are like Teflon. They just bounce right off, kind of like the nonstick pan. And this is called the negativity bias. So our brain just tends to have a bias towards negative thinking and negative emotions. Scientists think that this might be because it was better evolutionarily. So, you know, assuming the worst made us survive better. And right now, like, this isn't as helpful as it was, say, you know, in the savannah when a lion was in the bushes. Right now, we kind of just suffer from our negative emotions, and a lot of us want to kind of feel less of those negative emotions, right? So here's the thing, is that we don't really just feel one negative emotion. We often feel a multitude, and we often feel negative emotions about our negative emotions. And this right here is kind of the place that we can really intervene to reduce the impact of the negative emotion. And kind of bear with me, I'm gonna present this in an interesting way. I'm gonna kind of use like a math formula to show you how negative emotions and the negative emotions about our negative emotions really impact our happiness levels. So let's think of it like this. Think about like an algebraic equation in which P is positive emotion, so you have P, and then you have N is negative emotion, and N for negative emotion. And then these will equal something between 1 to 100, which will be happiness level. So 100 is your happiest day, 1 is your most miserable day. So if we take P minus N equals 1 to 100, and that can kind of give you an equation for how you feel in the day. The thing is that oftentimes with our negative emotions, we don't only just feel one. So what happens is that, for example, let's say that you have a job interview this coming week. So let's say that you feel super anxious and super stressed about the job interview. And then on top of that, because you feel so anxious and stressed, you feel really fearful that your anxiety and your stress will sabotage your chances during the interview. So, maybe you'll start mumbling or sweating, or you're nervous that you're just gonna mess it up because you're just too nervous, you're too stressed. So essentially we have two negative emotions here at work. We have the stress, worry, anxiety, whichever you want to call it. And then we have the fear about that emotion that is essentially a multiplier for the negative emotion. So in this case, let's kind of, with our math example, let's plug this in. We'll say, so we have P minus, and I'm going to put 2n. So P minus 2n equals to 1 to 100. So we see here that we actually just lowered our chances of reaching a high number in that happiness level by quite a bit. So what we want to do is we want to work on that negative emotion against the negative emotion. That's where that's kind of like the low-hanging fruit for us in our days. And it's a very kind of easy to do intervention. So if you just grab like a piece of paper, you can do it right now if you want. Okay, so I'm going to teach it to you. So the thing about negative emotions is that it's kind of counterintuitive how we work with them. So a lot of people want to control their negative emotions. They want to resist them. They want to like squelch them down. But the thing is that that's not how it works. And what actually is really effective is to step towards the negative emotion. So I'll teach you a technique how to do this. So the thing is, if we go back to our interview example, is that let's think about kind of a person that has zero stress or anxiety. If I asked you right now, if like you could have zero worry and zero stress about an upcoming interview, would you say you wanted that? Like if you had a magic button and you could just take away all of your stress about an upcoming job interview, would you do it? So comment below if you would or not. So I'm guessing a lot of you would. You would take all the worry, you would take all the stress, and you would erase it down to zero. You would have no worry, no stress. So the thing is that the person that has no worry and no stress about a job interview is not the person that comes in prepared. It's not the person that printed out their resume beforehand and has a copy to give to the interviewer. It's not the person that researched the company. It's not the person that maybe they don't arrive on time because they weren't stressed enough to map the Google route beforehand. So it's actually not great to have zero stress or zero worry. Our stress and our worry is actually valuable to us. It's trying to protect us. It's trying to help us. And actually, all negative emotions indicate a positive characteristic about the person feeling it. So say that you feel guilt. That might mean that you think that you're not doing well enough at a task. Say if you feel like guilty as a parent, maybe you value really engaging with your children and you have a really high bar. That's an excellent characteristic. Or if you feel grief, that means that you lost something that you really loved, and you can't really have love without grief because they go hand in hand. So how do we kind of work with this negative emotion to make it kind of relax instead of fighting against it? If you think about it, like when you try to tense up and fight against pain, it actually often makes it worse. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of ease into it, accept it, and it'll kind of dissipate in that way, and then we'll be just left with our P minus N instead of the P minus 2N, which we do not want. So if you have a piece of paper, make one column on the piece of paper the negative emotions, just list out a few, and then on the other part of the piece of paper, the second column, list out all of the characteristics and values that are good about these negative emotions. So like, what does this negative emotion indicate about you as a person that's really good and admirable? You might be surprised at how your negative emotions are working for you and actually show that you're a really conscientious and considerate person, and they're trying to help you, they're trying to protect you. So next time you feel one of these negative emotions, you can kind of greet it as a friend. You can say, hey, stress, hey, worry, thanks for looking out for me. Like, I appreciate it. I understand what we're trying to do here, but I'm not going to listen too much to you, but I am going to listen to some of the things you're telling me because I do not want to, be the person that's late to the interview. I do not want to be the person that didn't prepare. So in this process of leaning into our negative emotion and really addressing our negative emotions about our negative emotions, we can really help dissipate some of that resistance. And it's a win-win. It shows us some great characteristics about ourselves, and it also helps us feel better. So I hope this is helpful to you. If you find this helpful, please subscribe. I actually am going to do a series on emotion. And if you have any questions, comment below. I'm happy to answer them. And I will see you guys next week.